This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, real MVPs? Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber.
Dub them ease.
And we are back for another edition of the Onside Kick right here on Most Valuable Podcast, where we're talking about everything that is going on in the NFL. We're done with our season previews, Mark, so we're all done with those. You guys can go in the Onside Kick playlist on YouTube or kind of scroll through the archives on iTunes and all the podcast services if you missed any of those, but we're kind of back to the normal rotation. 3 topics a week, kind of bringing those in, and we got some good ones this week. Going to be talking about the Cleveland Browns after preseason game number 1, after Hard Knocks episode number 1, as number 2 comes out tonight.
Yeah, I was going to say episode 2 comes out right now.
As we are recording this probably during or a little bit before the Hard Knocks episode number 2, but we have all that. We're going to be talking about should Baker Mayfield be the starter for the Cleveland Browns this year. Then we're going to kind of look at dark horses for the NFL playoffs, what teams can kind of go from the bottom of last year to the playoffs this year. And then we're going to round everything out with, I said we were going to do this like 2-3 weeks ago. We kept pushing it and pushing it. We're finally going to do it before the season starts. Our first mock draft, not official first mock draft, but kind of our way too early / preseason top 10 for the mock draft. We kind of did the same thing for the fast break also on the NBA side. But before we get into everything, a little bit of housekeeping here at the beginning. Number 1, if you want to help support us, make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. That's where you can, if you're at the $10 tier, come and join a podcast. We talk about what you want to talk about, and you get to be on the podcast each month. You're at that level on Patreon. You can also get an MVP shirt. You're not wearing it. I'm not wearing it, but Dave is down below in that store. Link also mostvaluablepodcast.com. You can catch the store there as well, as long as everything that we post for MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, make sure to go to iTunes, go to Apple Podcasts if you have either. Make sure to give the show a 5-star rating, and then type a little something about why you like listening to the Onside Kick each and every week. But Mark, let's jump right into it. And the first thing we are talking about is the Cleveland Browns. And the first thing before we get into the headline of, should Baker Mayfield start for the Browns and kind of have that overreaction, I want to ask you, after Hard Knocks episode 1, after preseason game numero 1, what's your kind of thought process with the Browns right now?
My thought with the Browns is obviously that they're just a better team than last year. They're a better team. They're showing up right now, but it's not necessarily surprising that a team that isn't good in the regular season is good in the preseason. So you got to pump the brakes a little bit.
Didn't the Lions go 4-0 in the preseason the year they lost everything?
They did, for sure. Cleveland, I think, might have done the same, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
I'll double check in on that.
Double check their last year's preseason wins, because that's important.
Don't have to go too far back for it.
But it's just one of those things where it's like you see a team and you're like, yeah, there's things that are better about this team, but then they still have some of the same issues. You know, we talked about how getting to actually view.
You're right. They went 4-0.
I thought so. If you win 4-0, you go 0-16. That's not a real rule. But we talked about it. You know, you see Hugh Jackson and you see his personality and really how he works and how, you know, a coach like Todd Haley, the offensive coordinator, is basically willing to call him out in front of all the other coaches and be like, you're soft. And I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
And he has to say, now remember, everybody, I'm the one who's in charge here. You're not in charge.
I used to be in your shoes and I used to get just as angry as you. But now when I'm sitting on this side of the table, I have a little bit of a different perspective.
You got to put up with my bullshit. And it just makes me sit there and say, this guy really should have been fired.
Last year.
He should have been fired last year. And I don't believe that very many people in that organization have much respect for him besides Dorsey. And I mean, and that's all that matters, because that's his boss.
That may change sooner rather than later if they start losing and losing and losing.
But then
they want to turn that around.
You see really good things, like you see good moments where Jarvis is catching him with one hand. You know, you see him trying to fire up his team, even if I thought it was kind of an incoherent mess of a speech that he gave. But still, I like that he's trying.
He was speaking from the heart, though.
He was, but you know, sometimes that does more damage than it does good. But I like that someone's trying.
Yeah.
They're trying something. But then you just see that. You see Jarvis making great catches. You see Baker doing great things. Then you go to the other side, and now everybody's dropping the ball.
Yeah.
And you have those little moments where it's like, yes, things are better, but let's remember, it's still the Cleveland Browns that went 0-16 last year.
Well, and that's why, for me, the thing that you kind of were saying some of the same things that I was thinking from the Hard Knocks episode, which I loved, but the one thing I didn't like, I didn't even notice it the first time I watched it. Then I was kind of listening to sports media, sports broadcasts, and people were bringing up the conversation that Hugh Jackson had with Baker on the field. And I'm like, I'm going to replay this. And I found, I'm like, oh, that's where it happened. Where basically he was kind of like, well, why don't you show up early with Tyrod? It's like, I can see where people come from with that, where it's like, if you're going to tell him to do it, just tell Baker to do it. Don't be like well, I ain't telling you what to do, Baker, but that guy you're in a battle with, he's showing up a little bit early. Just say, hey, Baker, show up with Tyrod. This is what leaders do.
At the same time, I will at least give Hugh Jackson a little bit of credit of you don't want to go to the guy and say, I'm telling you to do this. You want him to do it. But being passive-aggressive is kind of defeating the purpose.
I would have... With me, the big thing that I had a problem with of it was I could see what you're saying, because part of me was like, well, you want it to be where it's, I didn't tell you to do that.
You want him to feel inspired to do it himself.
You feel like you came up with the idea to do it. But
he almost needed another player to go and tell him that. Well,
and the whole way he did it with the whole quarterback competent, I wouldn't have done that. I would have been basically just like hey, I'm not telling you have to do it, but hey, understand, you look at other quarterbacks like Peyton Manning, like Drew Brees, like Tom Brady, all these guys that are the best at their position, the top 5ers, the top 10ers, they're doing what Tyrod's doing. You got to make that decision.
You could really
do you want to be like them, or do you want to be like Tim Tebow?
You could really go out there and say, one of the reasons Tyrod's got this job, first man in the building, last man out.
Yep.
And if Baker doesn't
let him make the choice.
If he doesn't get it from there, that's telling you a little bit of something. But yeah, I don't know. The passive aggressiveness of it was a little silly, but that just further cements that the guy's just not a leader. He's not leading his team.
Hugh Jackson.
Yeah, he's not a leader. He's not leading his team. He's not inspiring them. Everyone's just kind of there and like, oh yeah, he's there, but hey, here's Todd Haley. Here's Greg Williams. That's my guy. It's one of those situations where people are not going to the boss. They're going to the supervisors instead.
Well, and moving on a little bit, kind of bringing in the preseason game, because that was the game where I'm like, I got to watch this game. I got to see a little bit of Baker Mayfield play. I want to see the one series that Tyrod plays. And throughout both of them, there's no clear winner to me at the end of this game, where it's like, yes, Tyrod is the starter, but it's like Tyrod went out there, completed every pass, had a beautiful touchdown pass to Njoku, where it's basically like he floated that thing in there, and I was like, ooh.
Yeah, Tyrod's a good quarterback.
That was a nice touch pass. I'm not saying like, oh, it's surprising, but it's kind of surprising to see that from the Browns, because usually you don't see that. And then it's like
you do in the preseason.
Yeah, and then Baker comes in, and it's like Baker doesn't look terrible either. Now, was he perfect? No, but he comes in there, and I know that overhype, like, oh, he's going up against the second unit. But, the thing is, after this first preseason game, the thing I think about is, we talked about it in the offseason of, you draft a quarterback this high, you got to go ahead and start him. Like, that's the thing. Or usually you don't draft a quarterback so high. It's like what I was telling you.
He was number 1 overall.
Yeah, it's like what I was telling you before the podcast, where most of the comments on our Jet preview way back at the end of June were, hey, Darnold's not going to start. It's going to be Josh McCown, and now we're getting closer to the season, and people are saying, yeah, Sam Darnold's probably going to start.
Yeah. You draft him this early, you don't draft him to sit on the bench.
But the question I'll ask is the one we'll get to, and I was reading an article today. This is from Dog Pound Daily, fan-sided network for the Cleveland Browns, and this Dan, their staff writer, wrote this article about the Tyrod Taylor Baker Mayfield debate needs to stop. He's basically on the side of Tyrod's the quarterback. Shut up. Don't be basically. He didn't say shut up. I'm paraphrasing. But stop this debate. Baker shouldn't be the starter. Tyrod should. What do you think? Should Baker Mayfield be the starting quarterback for the Browns this season?
I think he probably should, in the sense of you drafted him number 1 overall. You draft a quarterback number 1 overall, you expect him to play. And Baker Mayfield's not that far removed from being ready to play. But Tyrod Taylor is one of those guys where you put him in there, and he's not going to lose a job. I actually think that going and getting Tyrod is probably one of the wrong quarterbacks to get for this bridge transition. You would have been better off served, and this is not a dig on them for the rumors that used to exist, but they would have been better served with an A.J. McCarron.
Okay.
They would have been better served with last year's Mike Glennon, like the Chicago Bears did. A guy who will probably not keep the job for long. But maybe could, but probably won't. That's what you're better off. They're not going to be, it's not good to be that Sam Bradford situation of the only reason he loses that job is if he gets hurt. Or Tyrod, the only way I can see Tyrod losing it is because Tyrod, he's not going to make mistakes, but he's not a risk taker either. He's not going to be that guy who's going to gamble and throw it deep when the guy is open right in front of him and he can get 5 yards. That's the kind of guy Tyrod is. And I think that's going to create some frustration, and that could be the thing that eventually switches over where a guy like Todd Haley is sitting there going, my damn quarterback isn't taking the risk. He's taking the safe thing every single time. I need a guy who will gamble. Baker Mayfield's going to gamble for me. That's the reason I can see him going. But the problem is Tyrod was good in Buffalo. He's coming to Cleveland, and he's going to be good in Cleveland. And that's going to create this kind of issue of everyone's going to want Baker Mayfield out there. And when you got a coach who's going to be kind of non-committal, because even though they are saying that Tyrod Taylor is the number 1 QB1, I'm not sitting there listening to them talk and reading what they say, and I don't get this sense that they truly believe it. Like even in Hard Knocks, they were just basically saying that, he's shown us what he needs to show us right now. It's like, okay, cool. I want them to just definitively say, which is funny because I compared him to personality-wise, Lovie Smith, just being very calm, very relaxed. I need him to pull a Lovie Smith and say, Rex Grossman's my quarterback. Just say, Tyrod Taylor is the starting quarterback.
Rex
and
Grossman's
that's all it
my
is.
Quarterback. But I mean, for me, the thing that and I thought about this today, and for me, I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? It seems like to me when you have a movie that came out like during your childhood and then you forgot about that movie, and then another movie comes out maybe when you're in like your 30s or your 40s and you're like, I think I've seen this movie before. And then you look back, you're like, oh, that's why it was a kid's movie when I was younger that I completely forgot about. The reason why I'm making this analogy is we've seen this movie before. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit of a different adaptation. But we've seen this movie before in the AFC with another team that wears the color orange. About 8 years ago, there was a quarterback who a team in Denver had traded for from Chicago. He came in, was the starter, was about, what, that was 2009 was his first year in Denver. So that was about 11 years ago. So he's 35 right now. And I only know that because I just looked it up. So he was about, what, 24?
Well, 9 years ago.
That's right. I went the wrong way. So he was 26 coming in, 27 the year that everything went down. That's Kyle Orton, by the way. Tyrod Taylor is going to be the Kyle Orton for the Cleveland Browns. That is what I am just looking forward to. Because
I think Cleveland Browns fans will love that, though. They get a win streak right off the bat.
And when I say looking forward to, I mean I know it's going to happen. It's not like I'm rooting for it to happen. I'm expecting it to happen, to where you look at it where the 2 years that Kyle Orton started in Chicago were basically bookmarked, where he started his first year, then he started the last year with Rex Grossman having the middle. His first year, the Bears went 11-5, were the second best team in the NFC. That was 2005, the 2006 playoffs, the year right before you guys went to the Super Bowl, I believe. Then you had the 2008 season. Didn't make the playoffs, but he was a 9-win quarterback. That Bears team went 9-7 that year and was good enough for second in the North Division. And then you look at Tyrod. Tyrod coming in, he's around the same age, just turned 29 about a week ago. August 3rd was his birthday. Happy birthday to Tyrod being 29 now.
Oh, he shares his birthday with Tim Tebow.
Tim Tebow's is today as we're recording.
Oh, okay.
So Tim Tebow's today. Happy birthday to Tim Tebow also. I was also going to mention him because that's who Baker Mayfield is in this story, is he's Tim Tebow. Where you draft a guy like Baker Mayfield, in the Hard Knocks episode, they even played. I know they did it with Jarvis Landry too. So it's like, oh, it's not just Baker. But those fans at training camp, Baker Mayfield, Baker Mayfield, like they made it a point to have that in the episode. And it's like, you
gotta have the drama.
If Tyrod starts losing games, and I'm not saying Tyrod alone, I'm saying this team, but Tyrod being the starting quarterback, if they lose games, that just gets louder and louder. And it all comes to the question, I'm assuming the Browns are going to buckle just like the Broncos did and throw Baker Mayfield out there maybe before they're ready. Oh, and also, this team has a track record of doing that. They did it last year with Deshaun Kaiser. And
put him out, took him out, put him out, took him out.
Threw him out there way before. Yeah. Like, he wasn't learning the playbook well enough, and he's the starter.
And
it just didn't make sense.
Immediately, yeah.
But I mean, and even though they say they learned from that mistake, show me you learned from it before I give you the benefit of the doubt with that. But I just look at this, and there's way too many similarities for probably the only difference is that Kyle Orton had a full season in Denver. Then they drafted Tim Tebow, where Tyrod and Baker are coming in together.
Tyrod doesn't have the neck beard.
No, he doesn't.
So, and does Baker plays baseball, right?
No, Kyle Murray does, the Oklahoma quarterback right now.
Well,
I don't think Baker plays baseball.
Maybe he'll end up on a minor league baseball team someday. Who knows?
But I mean, I look at it and I go, the Browns are in the same situation. Baker may not start the beginning of the year, but he's going to start some point this season.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing because I think they just got in their own way with this. They were the number 1 overall pick. There was no reason for them to get a guy like Tyrod Taylor. It didn't make sense because everybody knew they were going to take a quarterback. If anything, it just made them go, oh, okay, so maybe they'll take Saquon at number 1 overall because then they can take whoever is available at 4. Okay, that's fine. You know, like that's kind of the situation that we sat in. And then, of course, the trade up kind of ruined things like that. But it just, this is not a good personnel management situation to be in. This is actually a really bad situation because you have a guy who's going to probably be good enough to not lose a job, and you have a guy who's good enough to be playing and taking that job. So at some point, the hard decision is going to have to be made. Does it create locker room issues? It might, but it probably won't. But the only reason I say it might is because Tyrod's done everything he needs to have the loyalty of his offensive team. You know, the rest of that offensive unit, he paid for them to go to California and train with him. He did it all on their own. He's got a good relationship with them. I think Baker probably does as well. He's probably building that right now. But it's just one of those things where you don't want to have any risk to divide a locker room. You don't want to have to make that hard decision of, like Jim Harbaugh. You know, when it was Colin Kaepernick doing good, Alex Smith is ready to come back. Sorry, I'm going to stay with Colin Kaepernick. That was a hard decision. That was a risky decision that could have gone very badly. It could have divided a locker room, et cetera, et cetera. You don't want to be in that situation. You don't want to have to make that choice. And you're putting yourself in a situation where you probably have to make a choice because I really like Tyrod. I think that's pretty obvious. I think Tyrod's a good quarterback. I think he'll do well here. Not amazing necessarily, but I think he'll do well. But I also like Baker Mayfield. And I think Baker Mayfield coming in will surprise some people. He'll put some actual energy into this team. And I think they'll win games with Baker Mayfield too.
The bottom line, I'll sum everything up for me, is I agree with, if you read the article, I'll put it down below in the description from Dan. I agree with him that the Tyrod Baker debate for right now needs to end. Tyrod's going to be Baker can do whatever he wants in the preseason. Like, he could go out there, never throw an incompletion, never throw a pick, and could score 5 touchdowns every game. He ain't winning that starting job. Mainly because the Browns are going to be, hey, we're not going to send you out too soon. Kind of like an overreaction where basically it's
the parents that wrap their child in bubble.
Exactly. Or I was going to say it's the reverse to what happens with parenting, where the first child, it's very much, oh, don't touch that. Oh, don't touch that. The second kid, it's like, nah, whatever.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the third kid, it's like, oh, well, we got a kid now? Like, no, I didn't even know
You're
we had a third one.
You're terrified that your child might blow up your car filling up the gas tank, so you don't let them fill up the gas tank. Therefore, you're scared that they might blow up the car because they don't know how to fill the damn car up with gas.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the Cleveland Browns are getting in their own way.
And the thing that I think of is when it comes to Tyrod, this year, no matter if he plays the entire season or if what I think is going to happen by, like, I don't know, middle of the season. Let's see. How many games did Kyle Orton play that year or start that year? Yeah, Kyle Orton started 13 games, and then Tim Tebow finished the last 3. So let's just go along with that. If he plays 13 games and Baker Mayfield gets the end of the year, the point is for Tyrod, he's a free agent after this year. If I'm Tyrod, use this year as an audition year. Do everything right. Do everything that you can to help this team win, although you're probably only going to win maybe 2 or 3 games if you're lucky, because, yet again, this is a team coming off of a 0-loss season, and like we said, their biggest thing, 0-win season.
And a 1-win season before that.
And the head coach is probably the biggest thing getting in the way of this team, but if I'm Tyrod, use this as an audition. I'm doing all the right things. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to play as well as I can. And the team that I sign with next year is going to get a pretty good quarterback.
Yeah, and it's a good situation to be in the sense of I think both these quarterbacks are good, and I think both of them can win games. I still have said it multiple times, and I'll keep saying it, that until they have a new head coach, I'm not going to believe in them. I think they will win 3-4 games this year, which is quite the step up from last year and the year before that, but not good enough, I think. And there needs to be some changes in Cleveland, but if they went out there and they said tomorrow that, you know what, Baker Mayfield's the starting quarterback, I'm not going to fault them for that because I think that's a good move. They can go either one of these guys, and I think they're making a decent move.
Last question I want to ask you, and this is just a quick fire at the end because I was listening today, I think it was to Doug Gottlieb, and he's filling in for the Herd this week. He had asked one of his guests that did the Giants make the wrong move by going Saquon over a Sam Darnold because of what we've seen from Sam Darnold. I want to ask you, from what we've seen from Darnold and Baker so far, I know it's preseason number 1 overreaction. Are we going to look at the end of this and go, maybe the Browns made a mistake going Baker over Darnold?
It's possible.
They had the number 1 pick.
You always want to see any of these quarterbacks who you draft high when they're playing second stringers or third stringers, they should be better than those guys.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. You want them to be. It's not until you see them actually taking real NFL regular season snaps that you really can start to actually think about this and make these decisions. And even so, sometimes a guy shows up and looks really good. Next year, he's terrible. So we need a few years to say that, but the thing for the Giants is Saquon Barkley should be really good. He's looked really good. The problem that they have was even if he was good, if Dobbs is not good and he doesn't look good so far, that's not good for him. Their backup quarterback, whatever his name is.
Oh, you're talking you're talking Davis.
Yeah.
You were talking Dobbs because we were talking Steelers before the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. There's too many of these guys. You were listing all these guys off, and I was like, Ricky, there's too many backup quarterbacks. But when it comes to Baker Mayfield,
you're thinking Davis Webb.
That was the risk. But you know what? I don't necessarily think of course, if it's wrong, we'll laugh at him. But 10 years from now, if Baker Mayfield's a big bust, the one thing I will say, it was a bold move, and it was the time for Cleveland to make a bold move. So I'm actually okay with it.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in the comment section. Should Baker Mayfield be the starter? Will he be the starter this year? What are your feelings towards the Browns right now? Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. And Mark, moving on to the next topic we're looking at, we're going away from the Browns, going into a place where it's kind of like the Shadowlands for the Browns. Like, the Browns are never going to be here this season. And I know that Jarvis Landry said they could win the Super Bowl, but spoiler alert, they won't. But we're talking dark horses for the NFL playoffs. And I've got some kind of rules and stipulations and kind of set this up for you. So before we go into who's our dark horses, this is how this is going to work. Some rules that I'm putting forth is, number one, the team last year has to have 6 or less losses. So they have to have 6 or less losses. 7 we may be able to argue. Because the reason why I put that through, and really that's the only rule.
wins?
Wins. I'm saying losses, wins. So 6 or less wins on the year. So that would mean the Raiders, the Dolphins, the Niners, Broncos, Jets, Bucks, Bears, Colts, Texans, Giants, and Browns are the ones that qualify. The reason why I put that one rule, really it's one rule, on this is I was looking back at the last 5 years, and I was like, I wonder what teams were bad one year and then the next year kind of made the jump. And this is just the last 5 years of what we're looking at. If we use 2017, so this past year, both the Jags and the Rams had under 6 wins. Jags had 3, Rams had 4. Both were in the playoffs this past year. In the 2016 season, we had the Cowboys with 4 wins, the Dolphins and Giants both with 6 wins. All 3 of those teams made the playoffs in 2016. 2015, the Redskins before that season had a 4-win season, made the playoffs the next year. 2014 is the only year that did not have a 6-win or less team. The only team to do anything like that was the Lions. They technically had 7, which I counted for that year only because A, they're the only ones, B, it was a losing record. And then in 2013, the Chiefs and the Eagles, who both made the playoffs, Chiefs had 2 wins the year before. Eagles had 4 wins the year before. So with those being our stipulations, I tried to Tony Reali that, and it went out of the camera shot.
I hope it just completely ruined the focus.
No, it won't.
And now it's all just blurry from here.
This is a really good camera. Mark. This thing is always autofocusing
That's
to make sure.
That's not actually true.
Well, it's doing a good job. It's doing its job to make sure we're in focus. Not like that Sony Handycam that RIP, it did its job, but now it's in Sony Handycam heaven. But that's the main rule that I have for this. They have to be a team that has won 6 or less games last year. With that being said, I'll go to you first. Who's your first dark horse who could make the playoffs?
First, I'll mention the 2 teams that didn't make the cut that were they could be dark horses, but luckily they were lower on my dark horse.
Were they 7-win teams?
They were both 7-win teams, but I'm going to take them both out.
Okay.
Cincinnati Bengals, Washington Redskins.
Okay.
Sorry, you're out of the conversation. My number one, I'm going to say, is a team that very kind of quietly had a really good offseason and quietly had a great draft. They had a bad season last year for very understandable reasons. They've got a lot of good things. They had hype last year, but it kind of just got put on pause, and I think the hype will come back. But that bad season kind of diminished it a little bit, but it deserves to be back. It's the Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
A team that didn't have the quarterback last year, had to get Jay Cutler to unretire, show up and basically say, I don't really want to be here, but I guess I'm here.
After he posted that nice butt shot on Instagram.
Right. Well, that was Kristen that posted that.
Yeah.
Cavalieri.
Same thing.
His wife posted that one. You know, he was excited to...
Jay was given the I don't care face.
Yeah, he was excited to just, live life being a farmer or whatever it is that he's doing. I'm very Cavalieri nowadays. But he had to put that on pause as well. The Miami Dolphins, getting Gesicki, getting Fitzpatrick are 2 awesome additions through the draft that they have. Yeah, sure, they lose a guy like Landry. They let him go. But they're sitting there saying, I don't think we need him. I think we can do just fine without him. And I'm interested in that. I'm interested in their belief that, Parker, Amendola, who I don't even know if Amendola is going to play, Julius Thomas, Kenny Stills, they're saying this is good enough. I'm also very interested in Jay Ajayi got traded last year. They're saying Kenyon Drake is going to be fine.
Frank Gore backing him up.
Gore is going to be just all we need. They're a team that's kind of gambling on themselves. They are willing to bet on themselves and say, we think we've got everything we need. And they might be right. You know, there was a lot of hype with them last year. They made the right additions defensively, offensively, to kind of move themselves forward and kind of actually make some progress here. Yeah, sure, this team took that step back last year, but Adam Gase was that hot offensive coordinator that got his job as a head coach. Things look decent, but just stuff has gotten in his way. This could finally be that year where they do take that step forward and are ready to compete. And don't forget, they are in the AFC. Sure, they're not going to win their division because of the Patriots, but it's a weaker conference.
A 9-7 team might be able to get that 6th spot in the AFC.
It might be just good enough.
And I mean, when it comes to the thing I'll say about the Dolphins before I give my first team is they're the team I'm waiting to see. All right, when you get Tannehill back, are you going to go back to, because this was a 10-6 team in Adam Gase's first year.
Yeah.
Are you going to go back to that? Are you going to be that if you have your quarterback? And to me, the Dolphins could be one of those teams that, to me, there's a few of them. The Colts are in this, the Ravens are in this, the Texans are in this, and then the dark horses. Well, the Colts would technically be a dark horse if you're counting them in this, but the Dolphins could be in it too, possibly, of they could be fighting like, all right, 9-7, 8-8, maybe a 10-6. Like, they all battle for that last spot.
Yeah. And
in
the Dolphins
AFC.
the Dolphins' schedule is not bad. I mean, Titans are that kind of mystery team, but it's early.
Yeah.
So you're going to be able to get them while they're still adapting to the new coach. You're going to play the Jets twice. You're going to play the Bills twice. Those are rookie quarterbacks. You should be able to get a leg up on them. If you're down on the Bengals, if you're down on the Bears, if you're down on the Lions, those are games that you would think should be winnable. The Colts will have Andrew Luck back, but hey, maybe he gets hurt again. You know, they still have a lot of things. And, of course, they're going to play the Patriots twice. They're going to play the Jaguars and the Vikings and the Packers. You know, they're going to play good teams.
But they play the divisional games, especially the Patriots. They play them close.
They beat them last year. They beat the Patriots. Jay Cutler, that's what he gave you. You should be happy, Dolphins fans. Jay Cutler gave you a win over Tom Brady.
And that's what you'll hear from what I've seen in the comment section from Dolphin fans is, oh, the Heat in Miami is going to get to them when we play them here. I've got 3 teams that I'm thinking about. I'll let you pick which one I mentioned, 1, 2, or 3.
Team number 2.
Team number 2, the Denver Broncos. And the reason why is, I'll be honest, right after that first preseason game against my Minnesota Vikings, I went to my playoff predictor and I was like, maybe they're not 12-4. And I was starting to take away wins. And then I'm like, wait, Ricky. It's the first preseason game. Don't do this to yourself. Number 2, they did play the Minnesota Vikings. Like, did we expect, like, and there was the first interception I saw from Case Keenum. It was right where you needed to. It just hit the receiver's hand, bounced in the air.
He needs a little time to get used to this new offense that he's got.
The Vikings are a team where if it hits the hands and the ball goes straight up, 9 out of 10, that ball's getting picked off. Like, if it's a tip drill and it goes straight up in the air, goodbye, you're kissing that ball goodbye because it's going to the other team. This is a team, though, that I think they were 5-11 last year. They get a guy who could be the answer at quarterback better than the option that they have. Like, the thing with Case Keenum that I'm continuing going to say is last year a one-hit wonder, and is last year is it A, a one-hit wonder, and is it B, man, the Vikings are a little bit better of a football team than the Broncos are. That team made Case Keenum a little bit better. That defense made Case Keenum a little bit better. Those questions are going to get answered. But, I mean, the Broncos and really the AFC West, when we talked about it, it's an interesting division. The Raiders have John Gruden coming in. We don't know what they're going to be like, if they're going to make a huge enough jump from their 6-10 record from last year. I expect the Chiefs to take a step back, losing their offensive coordinator, losing Alex Smith, throwing in, I know he's not a rookie, but it's technically the Ben Simmons debate that I'm having with Patrick Mahomes. He's basically a rookie or a redshirt freshman, if you want to use the college term for it, where he's a rookie when it comes to actually starting games, and I don't know what the Chiefs are going to be. And then you got the Chargers, who they could be primed to take the division, and I feel like the Broncos, if things start clicking where it's like, hey, we now have the quarterback. Hey, we're figuring out the run game finally. Like, Royce Freeman actually looked pretty good on that team in the preseason game. If they can figure some things out, if Bradley Chubb can be a little bit better because he kind of looked like a rookie in that preseason game, the Broncos could be a team that could win the AFC West, and if not, could be a wild card team.
They've got a good enough defense to get him in position.
Mm-hmm.
It's really going to come down to that offense. If they can perform well enough, if Case Keenum can go and kind of get in tune with what he had in Minnesota, if the run game can be effective, if those wide receivers can play up to the level that they should be able to play at, it's going to have to take a whole team effort there.
Because we all know today, Paxton Lynch got demoted. He's now the third-string quarterback. Chad Kelly, the old Miss grad, he's now the backup quarterback
Swag
behind.
Kelly. And pretty soon, Paxton Lynch, he's going to get demoted to unemployed. So
maybe
they got to just cut it. I mean, they got to just say enough's enough. Cord. We whiffed on this one.
The thing that I heard today, I think it was Around the Horn, one of them said the only reason why he still has a job is because he was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
It's the only reason why he still has a job right now.
If he was a third, fourth, fifth rounder, he'd be out of the NFL.
Well, who's your next team?
Next team, I got to do it because it's me. It's the Chicago Bears.
Bears.
I couldn't say them first because I couldn't show that much of a bias.
Super Bowl, Super Bears, man.
I mean, if any team is going to go 16-0, it's probably the Bears. So, here's the thing for Chicago. I mean, it's just like on paper, they're doing everything right.
Signed Roquan today.
They signed Roquan finally. So speaking of paper, he's out there. Is he going to play for a little bit? Who knows? We'll see what happens, but eventually he'll get out there. They go get weapons. Gabriel, Robinson, Anthony Miller, Burton, they get all kinds of weapons.
Which, the funny thing, I was listening to ESPN Chicago last week, and I think it was Fred Hubner was like, he's all upset that Allen Robinson has not played, and he's like, I don't even know if he exists. He's not on the sideline. He's not anywhere. Like, where is he? He doesn't exist. So, I mean, there's that too. They signed him, but does he exist?
It's all right. He'll go out there eventually. That's the thing. They played the Hall of Fame game, so it's like we've played two preseason games.
Yeah.
But this is preseason game number 2.
Yeah.
Anyways.
That Hall of Fame game is basically like a glorified scrimmage.
Yeah, it's a waste. It's fun because, finally football, but then you get into the second half of the first quarter.
It's a pageantry game.
Yeah, second half of the first quarter, you're like, why am I watching this again? But anyways, they did everything on the defense that they need. They've gotten some additions. They had a top 10 defense last year. The problem was that the coaching was bad. Well, they got a new head coach. They got new play calling. All right. They didn't have good receivers. Well, they fixed that. They had a good run game. That's still there. Mitch Trubisky should just go into year 2, hopefully progressing because, he played like a rookie, essentially. They've got everything that they need there. It just needs to gel. It just needs to work. And for the Chicago Bears, they do need things to go right. They need the pass rush to be better. They need to have that offensive line stay together and be in one piece because it already looks a little bit like it's in shambles. So we'll see what ends up happening with that and if that keeps Mitch Trubisky alive. But really, they've got everything they need. The biggest problem for the Chicago Bears is just
the schedule.
Schedule, division, conference, it's all going against them.
And that's why, for me, the biggest thing is I can't stand when I hear Bear fans, and I hear it all the time being here in Chicago. Sean McVay came over to the Rams, and they made the playoffs, so we're going to make the playoffs this year. Double not so fast, my friend. And the reason why I say that is you got to think the situations are different. You mentioned the division. The Rams last year didn't have Aaron Rodgers alone. Didn't have Aaron Rodgers, didn't have the Packers or Vikings in that division. Seahawks, they're doing this. The Cardinals, they're doing this. The 49ers are doing this, but they're further down in that process than the Rams
the process of going up didn't start until it was too late.
Exactly. Whereas the Bears are going to go up against Aaron Rodgers, who's coming back, a Viking team that is Super Bowl favorites. Are they going to win? Who knows? But Super Bowl favorites. And
some people's Super Bowl favorites.
If Aaron Rodgers wasn't on the Packers, everyone would be saying the Vikings are for sure NFC North winners in the preseason. The only reason why the Packers are even in the discussion is because they have the first or second quarterback in the NFL. However you look at it, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers debate. But then you look at the rest of the schedule. You play the Patriots, loss. You play the Rams, loss. there's a lot of games on the schedule that could be hard for the Bears to where it's like, hey, this is a good team, but at most it's like, oh, wow, we're a 7-win team this year because we played so many hard opponents.
They need things to go right. My bet on the Chicago Bears still stands that they are the upset special of they're going to beat some good teams, and they might be the reason a team like the Vikings that they played Week 17, they might be the reason the Vikings lose home field advantage.
They play us.
They don't get that first week bye.
At home every single time.
You know, it's just one of those times where they might be a reason that messes something up. They got the 49ers Week 6. They could walk over into San Francisco and be the reason the 49ers miss the playoffs if they win that game. You know, they're going to be a team that really goes to play. Will they get in the playoffs? They might. They count as a dark horse. They might be in there, but it's a tough road for them to really do it. So we'll have to wait and see and kind of temper the expectations a bit.
Yeah, they're a team that, I mean, there's excitement for, and I wouldn't be surprised if they made the playoffs, but at the same time, I'm not going to go ahead and punch that ticket quite yet.
If the Bears' schedule was flipped, you take the first 8 games, you put them at the end, the last, and put them in the front, I think the Bears would be in a much better situation because they would probably surprise one or two of these better teams at the current end of their schedule. And the beginning of the schedule is easy, but it's during that gelling time and getting used to what's going on to where they might have one or two of those games slip by. Where if it was the other way, this is a team that's looking at probably 9-7. And
I mean, the only other thing I don't like about their schedule is you got 3 of the 4 rookie quarterbacks. And even though the Bills won, that one I'm taking out because I don't think Josh Allen's going to be able to beat the Bears. But like, if Rosen is starting and Darnold, who probably will be starting, yeah, I could see the Bears winning those games right now, but those could be games where it's like, man, Sam Darnold just looked too damn good.
I don't know.
And surprise the Bears, kind of like how you said the Bears could surprise teams.
It's certainly possible. I mean, any given Sunday, but
both those games,
I don't expect any of the rookies to do very well.
I have Bears beating all of the rookies this year, even if Sam Darnold plays. I'll let you pick again, 1 or 2. What's the next team I do?
Let's stick with it. Team number 2.
Team number 2, the New York Giants. This is a team that I know you are, correct me if I'm wrong, you're down on this team this year, correct? Or is it just you're not?
I'm not necessarily down on them. I just don't have faith in Pat Shurmur. I think they'll be an all right team, but not a playoff team.
So that's your part of it. I know Sean, who's done videos, and he said in our prediction videos that he is down on the Giants this year. This is a team that I feel, I wish I had the piece of paper to see how many losses they had that first year. I feel like this could be a situation where we saw between 2010 and 2012 and 2013, where the Eagles went from 4 wins to 10 wins to win the division. Or like when the Cowboys went from 4 wins to 13 wins. I'm not saying the Giants are going to win 13, but they did that flip to win the division that year. This is a Giants team that adds Saquon Barkley, who looked really good in that first preseason game, and I know everyone's comparing him to LT. I'm not going to make that comparison, but I'm going to say he's going to be pretty good and will be a high candidate to win Offensive Rookie of the Year this year in the NFL. But also, I am confident in Pat Shurmur and what he's going to be able to do with Eli Manning to where this could be a team, 3 losses last year. I wouldn't be surprised if this is wins. 3 wins last year. I'm used to talking about...
They wish they had 3 losses last year.
We're used to talking about good teams.
Yeah.
And we're used to talking about low losses, but 3 wins last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they're like a 10-6, 11-5 team. 11-5 is really pushing it, but like a 10-6 team, and they make the playoffs.
I would be surprised by that. The hard thing for them, too, is their division's good. Yeah, the NFC East is really a big thing for them. Because of the
toughest division, toughest conference.
Because of the fact that they're going to have to go against the Cowboys, who will be better than last year.
Yep.
They're going to have to go against the Redskins, who have Alex Smith now, so that's going to be a very good quarterback.
And then the Super Bowl champs.
Defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles are going to be there too.
Yep.
That's difficult to do. The fact that you got to get used to a new coach. You're going to have this new rookie, which is fantastic with Saquon Barkley. But he got a little banged up already, so let's not get too excited. We don't want to have a Dalvin Cook type of situation.
At this point, if I'm the Giants, just shut him down. Just shut him down for the preseason.
He's going to be fine, yeah.
I know, but Like, for me,
No, I'm saying, he's going to be fine
starters,
week 1.
yeah,
Like, he'll be able to play.
If I'm a team, starters don't play. Like, you just shut them down. Like, I know that the game speed is different in a game compared to practice, so they need some type of play out there, but, like, come on. Like, I'm not risking injuries out there for my main assets.
Not to anybody who's good. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see for the New York Giants, but they got embarrassed last year. Everything went wrong. Injuries happened. Eli got benched. Their head coach was bad. The whole organization looked bad. So that certainly could be some fire to remotivate them. I really feel like Eli Manning needs to go out there and just dominate next year. Be that good Super Bowl winning Eli Manning, not the kind of Eli Manning that throws too many interceptions and people are wondering when he's going to be gone.
And that's the thing I wonder, if the Pat Shurmur system will help Eli Manning in the same way it helped Case Keenum, where basically Case Keenum, we were looking at him, journeyman quarterback, he's the backup, Sam Bradford went down, I'm sitting there pulling out my hair like I wasn't even confident in Sam Bradford, how can I be confident in Case Keenum? And Case Keenum goes out there, and except for that very last game, played pretty well last season.
But then we also run into what we talked about earlier. Do we have the same problem, a Hugh Jackson problem of really good offensive coordinator, good offensive mind, bad head coach?
I mean, we'll find out.
We already saw that. Well, we already saw it once with
True, but he
Shurmur.
but the only reason why I'm willing to give him a pass on that one is you try to turn around the Browns. It's
I've
not an
done
easy
it
job.
many times in Madden.
Not an easy job to do in the real world.
It was easy in Madden.
It's not an easy job. Let's do this. Kind of end it up. How many more do you have?
I have just one quick one.
I was going to say last one. You'll give one. I'll give one. Then we'll
And
end it.
they're really not. I'm not a firm believer in them necessarily, but I think the Oakland Raiders have a chance.
Okay.
And the reason I say the Oakland Raiders have a chance is because I do not believe in John Gruden's longevity. I do not believe in what he's doing, which is getting a lot of
the whole
old people.
Look at the whole Khalil Mack situation.
Yeah, that's a disaster.
I mean, I pitched having that be the topic instead of this for this week.
But, they've got all these older type of guys surrounding Derek Carr. They're trying to get these veterans. It's kind of an old philosophy that they have going on right now.
Showing them tape from the 70s.
Yeah, big culture shift. If people buy into it, it could work. I just don't know if it's going to happen, and I don't know if it lasts. That's the problem. So that's what I'm saying. Even if they are good, they make the playoffs this year, the next year, I don't necessarily have faith that they'll be back again.
It reminds me of, like, if, let's say, you had a teacher from the early 2000s, late 2000s, retire, say, hey, I'm going to go do this other job for a while.
Go broadcast for a while.
Exactly. Then he comes back and he's like, I want to get back into the teaching game now that it's 2018, where everything's smart boards and technology. And he walks in on that first day and goes, all right, pull out your notebooks, which the kids go, computers, right?
You mean
Or
Chromebooks? Yeah.
No, pull out your paper and pencil, and he's wheeling in that projector with the transparency.
No one
on
knows
it.
where he found it, but he found it somewhere. It was in the basement.
He's then yelling because what's this big white board? Where's my thing that I can pull down and put the projector on? Yeah, that's kind of what I think of when I think of John Gruden right now. Two teams I'm going to mention as honorable mentions because neither of us have mentioned them, and they could be. To me, I looked at it was like, these are probably easy picks. The Colts, they get their quarterback back.
Yep.
The Texans, they get their quarterback back.
See, I kind of felt like those teams shouldn't
they're
count.
Too easy.
Yeah, I felt like those teams shouldn't count because they probably would have been playoff teams if they had the quarterback.
Or they would have been like 8-win, 7-win teams with a quarterback. The last one I'm going to throw out there is a team I have been riding all offseason.
I know you have.
The 49ers.
Yep.
They're a team that I feel like they are going to make the playoffs. They're going to be the 6th seed in the NFC. They're going to be a 10-win team. Jimmy Garoppolo is special. This team is special. This is the team that kind of makes that second year turn with Kyle Shanahan. Do they win in the playoffs? Probably not, but dark horse, they make it.
It's certainly possible. I mean, they've got a lot of things going for them. I just don't think they have more hype, and I don't think they've done enough. Like, they don't have enough around Jimmy Garoppolo yet. They're about 1 year away. The next year, I totally believe they will have everything they need. They will be ready to go. they're going to compete. They're going to be right there. They're probably going to just miss out on the playoffs. So I don't doubt that part of it. But, it's going to be tough. They're going to play a lot of tough teams, and Jimmy Garoppolo needs to do it for a full season now, something that hasn't happened yet. He's never had the opportunity, so it'll certainly be interesting. I don't know if I completely buy it, but I at least wouldn't be surprised.
And the thing I'm just going to throw out there, although it's a small victory for your argument, it shows that the window is very small. I think it was Pro Football Focus did the quarterback rankings, because First Take was complaining that that Jimmy Garoppolo was ahead of Dak Prescott on the rankings. But the thing I found very interesting, number 10, Matthew Stafford. Number 11, Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm saying this could be the year where Jimmy Garoppolo surpasses Matt Stafford, to where we're saying, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo is a better quarterback.
Let's see what happens in fourth quarter when the game's on the line. We'll see what happens.
Let's see what happens with how many wins each team has, because I'm not that high on the Lions this year either.
That's all that Matt Stafford needs. 2-minute drill, 1 touchdown game. I got the win.
Even with a broken shoulder, he'll do it.
That's when you start going, is it too late to bet on this game?
Yeah. Is it too late? Because you can do that now. You can bet on these games. Any final thoughts, any teams that you're like, maybe I'll say something about them?
The only thing, I didn't check their record, so I probably wrong on it. I don't remember what the Dallas Cowboys record was, but I expect them to bounce back as well.
They were a 9-win team.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't think they were that bad, but I expect them to be in contention for the playoffs.
The teams you mentioned at the beginning that were 7-win teams, throw the Packers in there also.
Oh, that's right.
The Packers were a 7-win team, but
that's not fair.
They're another Colts one to where it's like they would have been at the top of the NFC with Aaron Rodgers. It's not fair
to just be like, Aaron Rodgers is back, so here you go.
Yeah, which, by the way, the young rookie wide receivers got mad that he called them out.
Oh,
they got mad that Aaron Rodgers called them out for being soft or something. But hey, everyone's just got to relax in Green Bay. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you're thinking down below in that comment section. Who are your dark horses? I know we went through 6 teams right now. Who are your dark horses? Who you think are going to be? They were bad last year. They're going to make the playoffs this year. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. And Mark, it's time to end the podcast doing something that, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, we were going to do this like 2 or 3 weeks ago and kind of tack it on to a preview. But then we were like, it was supposed to be the AFC West one. Then you weren't in. We did it over the phone. I'm like, well, I want to do this as a video. Then the week after, I'm like, you know what? Let's just push it another week. Because what's the point of tagging it on when we have this kind of buffer week between the previews and our predictions? So we're going through the top 10 to our preseason mock draft. Going to go through the picks, kind of talk a little bit about what we expect from this group of guys coming in. And how we do it is, first off, the draft order is a little different. We did not come up with this draft order. This was through tankathon.com. So if you're mad that your team is number 1, looking at you, New York, don't be mad at us. Be mad at Tankathon.
Not our fault.
Let's get right to it. Let's just go through it. You'll give yours. Cool. I'll give mine. Then we'll talk about the picks. Give your 1 through 10.
All right. Got it on the phone, so don't think I'm texting. Number 1, Jets, going with Nick Bosa, defensive end, Ohio State, the Ohio State University. The Browns got number 2 overall, Rashawn Gary. What do I got there? Rashawn, is it Gary or Gray?
I think it's Gray.
Okay, because I really want it to be Gary, because that would make me so happy if his last name was Gary. Rashawn Gray, defensive line, Michigan. Bengals, Greg Little, the offensive tackle out of Ole Miss. We got the Colts going with Jonah Williams, another tackle, Alabama. Dolphins getting Ed Oliver, going on the defensive line from Houston. Cardinals going with A.J. Brown, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss. The Bears somehow traded up this high from number 32 overall. Trey Adams, the tackle from Washington.
Is that a Super Bowl joke?
That's right. Bears win the Super Bowl. The Giants then going with Justin Herbert, quarterback out of Oregon. Because it's got to be one. There's got to be a quarterback. The Bills then going with Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle out of Clemson. And the Bucks with Clelin Ferrell, defensive end out of Clemson.
Well, and then going right into mine, starting off the Jets. They're going to do the same thing you had them doing, and they're going to go with Nick Bosa out of the Ohio State University. Then the Browns going to go with Ed Oliver, the DT from the Houston Cougars. Then the Bengals going Jonah Williams, the tackle from Roll Tide, Alabama. The Colts going with Greedy Williams, the cornerback from LSU. Dolphins going to go wide receiver and go grab themselves Deebo Samuel out of South Carolina, get themselves a Gamecock. Then the Cardinals going to go with Clelin Ferrell, the DE out of Clemson. Bears going to go and protect Mitch Trubisky, get Greg Little, the tackle from Ole Miss. Then the Giants, they're going to go with Rashawn Gray, the DE from Michigan. The Bills going with Dexter Lawrence, another defensive lineman, this time from Clemson. And then the Bucs going to take Trey Adams, the offensive lineman from the Washington Huskies. And the thing you'll notice about mine, Mark, that's different from yours is I don't have a quarterback in my top 10. The thing that I want to ask you is I looked at this group of quarterbacks that we could potentially have coming into this draft. And I feel like this could be the first time since I want to say the 2013 draft. I'll have to look into that. There was a draft class recently where we didn't have a spectacular quarterback class.
Yeah.
What are your kind of early thoughts with this quarterback class since you only had one and it's Justin Herbert from Oregon?
Yeah, I do like Justin Herbert. I think he's got a lot of talent, and I think that he's a very interesting, I'll use offensive weapon, kind of is the way to say it. And the other thing to think about, too, is, you know, he is young and all that, so that there's kind of that component to it. But the offensive or the quarterback class for this one, it's a little weak at the moment. None of these guys, besides, like I said, I like Justin Herbert, none of these other guys really stand out to me as here's the guy. You know, this is the one that's going to make some waves. What we really need right now is we need a Mitch Trubisky to come out there and, even though he's never played, has one season, goes out there and lights it up. You know, we need one of that. We need when you have the surprise transfer or the red shirt that nobody knew about. Well, red shirts don't work because they can't get drafted next year. But we need somebody.
Unless it's like Jameis Winston and he was a redshirt sophomore.
That's true. That could happen. So I guess we do have a few that could happen. But Jameis is another good example of that guy who can come out there, surprise the world, and like, hey, who's this guy? We need to have one of those this coming season. But the flip side of it, I mean, this is, of course, not the actual order. But you look at stuff like the Jets, the Browns. They just grabbed their quarterback.
Yeah, they grabbed them.
The Colts, they got Andrew Luck. The Bengals are maybe the only ones, with maybe the Dolphins in there too, that could maybe go get a quarterback besides the Giants like I had them do. There's not very many teams that are going to probably be in the top 10 that are going to need quarterbacks anyways.
Yeah.
So it kind of works out for there to not be very many available that are worth taking when really it doesn't matter because none of those teams need them anyways.
And I mean, the thing, I was right on the draft class, by the way. Like, the way I'm looking at the 2019 draft class at this point, and of course we've got an entire season to go. There could be a quarterback that comes out, makes his name known. Like, the sum that people are looking at is Drew Lock is apparently the favorite right now. I'm not really in love with Drew Lock, the quarterback from Missouri, but Mel Kiper said Lock, and then who you have and Justin Herbert are the only ones that would have first-round grades. Other than that, people are excited about, like, what are we going to get from Jarrett Stidham, the quarterback who's going to be, I think he's a junior at Auburn. What are we going to get from Shea Patterson? He's that surprise transfer that you're talking about going over to Michigan. Will Grier, the senior, who's going to be with the West Virginia Mountaineers this year, and the guy who could kind of be like that Mitch Trubisky, I know is from the ACC, so it kind of fits, is maybe like a Ryan Finley or a guy like Nick Fitzgerald, where these guys started last year, but then having that second year as a starter because Mitch had the 2 years before he was drafted. I just think we're going to get another year kind of like 2013.
He only had the one season, Mitch Trubisky.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to get the 2013 season of, like, if I just go through the top 10 picks positional-wise, offensive tackle, DE, offensive tackle, DE, guard, running back, cornerback, guard. The first quarterback taken was 16th overall, from Florida State, E.J. Manuel by the Bills.
Yeah.
The next guy after
How did that work out?
Geno Smith was the next quarterback
How did that
taken.
work out?
Mike Glennon by the Tampa
How
Bay
did
Buccaneers.
that one work out?
The next one, Matt Barkley by the Eagles.
God, I can just keep doing
Ryan
it.
Nassib by the Giants.
Keep going.
Tyler Wilson by the Raiders. Landry Jones by the Steelers. At least he's still with the team that drafted him from 2013. And then if I scroll down...
Although maybe not for long because of Mason Rudolph.
And then Landry Jones was not the last one. You had Brad Sorensen, Zach Desert, B.J. Daniels, Sean Renfrey were the quarterbacks taken, all the quarterbacks taken
basically
in 2013. And that's kind of what I'm sitting at, thinking of what we're going to have, where on the other side of it, it's going to be interesting to see. Usually we see a draft like the Andrew Luck RG3, the Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, the Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, where it's quarterback. This year, it looks like it's going to be which defensive lineman do you want? Do you want the edge rusher and Nick Bosa, the baby constrictor, or do you want to go with Ed Oliver, who will be an inside lineman on the defensive line for the Houston Cougars? There's some mock drafts that had Oliver first, but I just like Nick Bosa and what he brings to the table.
I like Nick Bosa a lot, too. Very explosive player that can do essentially what his brother's doing. Can just kind of take that defense to the next level.
I would not be upset if the Chargers had like injuries this year and were the first pick so that they can have Bosa on the outside.
That would be...
It's not going to happen.
That would be quite a phenomenon if one team managed to draft both those brothers that high. That'd be impressive. But the thing is, you mentioned the defensive tackles, defensive ends, and offensive tackles. There's a lot of really talented linemen kind of right up at the top. Yeah. And it further cements this,
Are you talking defensive or offensive linemen? Okay.
It further cements right now that...
Much like 2013, we had the same thing.
Yeah, that's how you win in the NFL with pass rushing ability and by and then the flip side of that is protecting your damn quarterback. Yeah. If you can't do both of those things, you're probably not going to get that far into the play. You're probably not going to make the playoffs, but you probably won't go that far in the playoffs if you can't protect your quarterback and put pressure on the other one.
I'm looking right now at, I'm using Mel Kiper's positional rankings. This is just the underclassmen that we can get from the defensive end side of the ball. Nick Bosa, Rashawn Gray, Clelin Ferrell, who is in both of our, these players are scattered around our top 10. And then a guy I didn't even mention from Alabama, Raekwon Davis. He's a guy that's going to be good. You got Joe Jackson from Miami. Kristen Wilkins, he's an underclassman that's going to be at Clemson this year, to where I feel like defensively, this is going to be a defensive draft to where it's people are just going to go, screw it. Hey, we don't necessarily need to take one of these quarterbacks because the draft isn't that strong. We're going to go ahead and get one of these defensive guys or get one of the offensive guys like Jonah Williams, Greg Little. Get one of these guys like an Adams who can come out and be a kind of, hey, we got to protect the quarterback. That's like with the Bears, why I had them, both of us had them go offensive linemen. Yeah. But that was an easy pick for me. Them, the Buccaneers, depending on what happens with Jameis, the Bengals, it's hey, you know what? We got to protect our quarterbacks a little bit.
And, you look at some of these teams up top, you mentioned it too, but, the glaring flaw, I'd say, for the Bengals is that offensive line. They can go get it. A glaring issue for the Chicago Bears, once again, offensive line. They got to protect that quarterback.
Unless they just see a defensive guy that they're screw it, we can get that later.
We need this type of guy. So many of these teams really need that. The Dolphins have some defensive line that they can replace. They lost a little bit of that. Yeah. You look into the Cardinals, they've got a young rookie quarterback. The Bills, a young rookie quarterback. And the Bills lost quite a bit on that offensive line. They are teams that need that. They are teams that can't wait to have a chance to get one of these guys. And you have some really solid options here of people who, as it stands right now, should be able to become, kind of those very stable guys like a, Little, out of Ole Miss. He's going to be one that's going to be solid. I really like I really like Adams out of Washington as just those guys who you can draft and you can say, kind of like what we were thinking with Quentin Nelson, only that's a guard instead of a tackle of.
Yeah.
Just put him there, and he will be there for the next decade.
Exactly. Or kind of like, I'm trying to think, wasn't there another offensive lineman from this past draft that was along with Nelson that it was like, I'm thinking McGlinchey. He wasn't like that. He was going to be a little bit of a faller. But, I mean, yeah, these offensive linemen, I think that this draft is going to be it's going to be interesting to see where teams fall because obviously this isn't for sure locked and loaded at the top 10. But, I mean, even thinking from around the NFL, like what teams really are going to need a quarterback next year? Like really need a quarterback where it's like
if somebody retires, that's kind of what it comes down to.
Is there anyone that kind of
Drew Brees could? Big Ben could, but they've got somebody back there already.
Big Ben will be interesting, but they just drafted Mason Rudolph.
The only reason I could see Drew Brees retiring is because that team is really good. They could maybe win a Super Bowl and Drew can just walk off into the sunset.
Saints fans are like, stop, Mark. Stop. We don't need that. Don't give us that.
Hey, you get a Super Bowl.
Don't give us that juju.
You get a Super Bowl.
But you lose Drew Brees.
You get a Super Bowl.
Now I'm trying to look at like what
the Giants, if they for some reason want to move on from Eli, maybe Shermer's really just like, I just got to get somebody else. And I think I found my guy.
No, I feel like there's not a lot of teams that are going to need quarterbacks. The rate, they took Lamar Jackson. They wouldn't ditch him after a year. But
Dolphins are up there, but I think that they still have a few more years of testing Tannehill because they gave him a deal.
Or the Bills, depending on how the Josh Allen plays out.
The Bills would have to be like number one overall to pass on Allen right now.
I mean, the point is there's not many teams that are like, man, we really need a quarterback after how many of them got quarterbacks in this past draft. The kind of one of the last things that I'm kind of thinking about for this one is the wide receivers. I find it funny that both of us had one wide receiver. You elected to go A.J. Brown, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss, who had 13 touchdowns last year in college football, had 1,664 yards. I opted to go with Deebo Samuel, who is going to be the wide receiver for the Gamecocks this year, just around almost 12,000 or 1,200 receiving yards last year, 5 touchdowns, so not as many as A.J. Brown. However, the thing I like is your fit, where the Cardinals, if they're a top 10 team, I could see them being a team where it's like, screw it, we got to get one of these wide receivers.
Yeah.
Because Larry Fitzgerald is a guy that will most likely be walking at the end of this year. This is
a good replacement. Yeah, this is a good replacement of that guy who can be explosive, who is going to get you some touchdowns. Great connection with your new quarterback, Josh Rosen. I mean, that would be an awesome combination, an awesome weapon. I would love to see that happen for the Arizona Cardinals.
And I mean, with me too, I would have had the Cardinals go with the wide receiver if I didn't have the Dolphins go with them. And the Dolphins, to me, could be a team where they could go defense, they could go offensive line. But I think at the end of the year, I was trying to put my mindset into Adam Gase, into that front office, and I'm thinking, all right, we just gave up Jarvis Landry. The wide receivers I was looking at, I'm like, you know what, at the end of the year, these aren't the wide receivers that are going to win you many games. We got to go out and get somebody who can be a quality not a quality, that sounds like I'm throwing shade at the wide receivers the Dolphins have, but we got to go out and get a guy who could be what Jarvis Landry was to us since they traded him to the Browns. But this draft is going to be very interesting with what we see this year, especially for me. I'm going to go back to it, the quarterbacks and what we see from them, because each and every draft class is kind of driven by the quarterbacks and everything else kind of falls into it. This is going to be one, though, that'll most likely be driven by the defensive players that we see out there, as I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of my 10 are defensive players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, yeah, we both have half of the picks are defensive picks.
And that really kind of goes with what we're saying of it's pretty balanced in, especially with those linemen, but there's some other talented players as well. You know, I have quarterback. We both have wide receivers.
Yeah.
So, but it's pretty evenly split of what's out there. And, you know, the teams at the beginning are going to be pretty happy. But the flip side of it, too, is we got a whole college football season left to go before this happens. And some of these people in here, they might not go. They might still stick around for another year or something like that. You know, who knows?
And then the one thing I will say kind of to wrap this up is we are going to have, I can't wait for draft season this year. We're going to have our mock draft starting really soon. I don't know the exact date, but around mid-season is when we're actually going to put out our first mock draft for the
not
year.
way too early, but still too early mock draft.
Yeah, Mark's like, that's still too early for me. Let's pump it down. Where I'm like, hey, you know what? Mid-season, kind of see where the order's at, and then get into the same rotation we were in last year. But I want to thank you guys for watching and listening. Let us know what you guys think. Who would you guys have for these picks for these teams? Who are you guys excited about? I know this upcoming Monday, Brandon and I are going to take these players, take the teams out of it, and just do our first big board top 10 for the college football season in general. So you guys get some double draft topics to start the football season. As college football season's coming up, the NFL season is inching closer and closer as we're week 2 in preseason for the NFL. I want to thank you guys for watching and listening. Housekeeping here at the end. Make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluable podcast. That's where you can help support the channel. And you can join a podcast each and every month here at the $10 tier, and we talk about what you want to talk about. You can also check out the shirt down below in the description in the shop. That shop also at mostvaluablepodcast.com, where you can catch MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, if you're on iTunes, if you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure to give the Onside Kick a 5-star rating. If you're on YouTube, go over to your iTunes. I know you have your iPhone. It's sitting right next to you. Pick it up, type in the Onside Kick into your Apple Podcast app. Give us a 5-star rating. Tell us why you like listening to the podcast. It would really help us out. I want to thank you guys for watching on YouTube. I want to thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.